Captain Elena Reeves didn't expect to die on a Tuesday. The colony ship Prometheus Dawn had been cruising through the Kepler 442 system when the micrometeorite swarm hit. One moment, she was reviewing terraforming protocols for the new world humanity would call home. The next, alarms screamed through the corridors as hull breaches erupted across 3 decks. All hands, abandon ship. The first officer's voice crackled over the intercom, barely audible over the chaos. Elena sprinted toward the escape pods, her magnetic boots struggling to maintain grip as the artificial gravity failed. She watched in horror as pod after pod launched, each one carrying fragments of humanity's desperate exodus from an exhausted Earth. When she finally reached Bay 7, only one pod remained. The launch was violent. G-forces crushed her into the acceleration couch as the pod's emergency thrusters fired, propelling her away from the dying mothership. Through the small viewport, she watched Prometheus Dawn break apart, its fusion core erupting in a silent flash that briefly outshone the system's distant sun. The pod's navigation system flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, but Elena knew the truth: she was drifting blind through an alien star system, with no way to control her trajectory or signal for help. 3 days passed. Then 4. The water recycler sputtered and failed on day 5. Elena rationed the remaining bottles, allowing herself only sips that barely wet her cracked lips. The pod grew colder as its systems degraded. She wrapped herself in the emergency thermal blanket and tried not to think about dying alone in the infinite dark. On day 7, the pod shuddered. Elena's eyes snapped open. Through the viewport, a planet loomed, rust-colored and scarred with ancient canyons. The pod had been captured by its gravity. She had no control over the descent. The heat shield deployed automatically, and Elena could only grip her harness as the pod became a meteor, screaming through the thin atmosphere. The crash was catastrophic. Metal shrieked, systems exploded, and then everything went black. When Elena opened her eyes, she was lying in red sand. The pod had split open like an egg, spilling her onto the planet's surface. She tried to stand but collapsed, her legs refusing to cooperate. Her mouth felt like sandpaper. The last water bottle had shattered in the crash. She was going to die of thirst on an alien world. Elena closed her eyes and waited for the end. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching, soft, deliberate and utterly inhuman. Elena first thought the shadows were hallucinations. Through her fever-blurred vision, she saw 3 figures approaching across the red dunes. They moved with an unsettling grace, their bodies seeming to flow rather than walk. As they drew closer, Elena realized they weren't human at all. They stood roughly her height but were impossibly thin, their limbs elongated like living reeds. Their skin, if it could be called skin, had the texture of smooth, worn stone in shades of deep ochre and burnt sienna. They possessed no visible eyes, yet Elena felt certain they could see her. Their heads were smooth and oval, with subtle ridges where facial features might have been. The nearest one knelt beside her. From somewhere within its body, a sound emerged, a melodic series of chimes and resonances that Elena's oxygen-starved brain couldn't process as language. But the gesture that followed needed no translation. The being extended one of its long fingers, and from its tip, a clear droplet formed. It grew larger, trembling in the alien gravity, until it was the size of a marble. The being touched the droplet to Elena's cracked lips. Water. Pure, cool, and impossibly sweet. Elena gasped, and the being produced another droplet, then another. She drank greedily, feeling life flood back into her cells. The other 2 beings joined in, each producing water from their own bodies in the same miraculous fashion. They fed her slowly, patiently, making gentle chiming sounds that might have been encouragement. When Elena finally found her voice, it came out as a rasp. "Thank you. Thank you." The beings showed no sign of understanding her words, but they seemed to recognize her gratitude. They helped her to her feet, their touch surprisingly warm despite their stone-like appearance, and supported her weight as they began walking. Elena tried to take in her surroundings despite her weakness. The landscape was harsh, endless red dunes beneath a pale orange sky. Two small suns hung on the horizon, their light casting long double shadows. No vegetation broke the monotony of sand and stone. No water glinted anywhere. This world was dying of thirst. Yet these beings had given her water, water that had literally come from their own bodies. How was that possible? How could life exist here without any visible water source? They walked for what felt like hours. Elena's rescuers supported her patiently, producing more water droplets whenever she needed them. Finally, they crested a massive dune, and Elena saw their destination. A city rose from the desert, not built upon it, but carved from it. Towering spires of compressed sand and stone reached toward the sky, their surfaces worn smooth by countless years of wind. The architecture was organic, flowing like frozen water, with no straight lines or sharp angles. As they descended toward the city, more beings emerged to greet them. Dozens, then hundreds, all similar to her rescuers. They gathered around Elena, chiming and resonating with what she interpreted as curiosity and concern. They led her into the depths of their city, through winding corridors that spiraled down into cooler darkness. In a chamber lit by bioluminescent crystals embedded in the walls, they made a bed for her from soft, woven fibers. More water was provided, along with a paste made from ground minerals that was surprisingly nutritious. As Elena lay back, overwhelmed by exhaustion and the impossible kindness of these alien beings, one question consumed her thoughts: why? Why would a species living on the edge of extinction in a desert world share their most precious resource with a stranger from the stars? She would spend the next weeks learning the answer, and that answer would change the fate of two worlds forever. Elena's recovery took 12 days. She counted them by the cycles of the twin suns, visible through a crystalline opening in her chamber's ceiling. The beings, she had started thinking of them as the Letharians, from the Latin for stone, attended to her constantly. They brought her water droplets, mineral paste, and something that looked like dried fiber but tasted faintly sweet. On the third day, Elena made her first breakthrough in communication. A young Letharian, at least, she assumed it was young based on its smaller size and brighter coloration, sat with her often. Elena started by pointing to objects and saying their English names. Water. Stone. Hand. The being would chime in response, and Elena realized the different tones corresponded to different concepts. She grabbed a piece of the mineral paste and hummed a questioning note. The Letharian responded with a three-tone sequence, a low resonance, a middle chime, and a high trill. Elena repeated it carefully. The being's body rippled with what might have been pleasure or amusement. Over the following days, a basic vocabulary emerged. The Letharians communicated through harmonic sequences, with meaning encoded in pitch, duration, and rhythm. Elena's human vocal cords couldn't reproduce many of the sounds, but she managed enough for simple exchanges. The young one's name translated roughly as Amberstone Singer. Through patient sessions, Elena learned fragments of the Letharian story, and it was heartbreaking. Their world, which they called Thessera, had once been covered in vast oceans. The Letharians had evolved as aquatic beings, their bodies designed to store and filter water with perfect efficiency. But 2,000 years ago, their star system had passed through a cosmic dust cloud. The event lasted only a few decades, but it was enough to strip away most of Thessera's atmosphere and boil off its seas. The Letharians had survived through an extraordinary adaptation. They had learned to compress water at the molecular level within their bodies, storing it in crystalline matrices within their stone-like skin. Each Letharian carried perhaps a gallon of water in this compressed state, enough to sustain them for months if necessary. But it was a dying solution. The planet's water was gone, and the Letharians could only recycle what remained in their bodies. Their population had dwindled from billions to mere thousands. Every drop was precious beyond measure. Why? Elena asked one evening, her harmonic pronunciation still clumsy. Why give water to stranger? Amber Stonesinger produced a complex melody that Elena struggled to interpret. Finally, the being used a gesture, pressing one long finger to Elena's chest, then to its own. Life calls to life. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. These beings, living on the knife's edge of extinction, had seen her dying of thirst and had chosen compassion over survival. They had shared their most precious resource simply because she was a living being in need. My people, Elena hummed carefully, have much water. So much water. Amber Stonesinger's body went very still. Other Letharians who had been passing through the chamber stopped. The silence stretched out, heavy with hope and disbelief. Elena pulled herself to her feet, steadier now after days of recovery. She gestured toward the ceiling, toward the stars beyond. My world. Earth. Covered in water. Oceans. Rivers. Rain falling from sky. The Letharians began to chime among themselves, their harmonics rising in pitch and tempo. It was the first time Elena had heard anything like excitement from them. I must tell them, Elena said, switching back to English in her urgency. My people will come. We'll help you. I promise. But even as she made the vow, doubt gnawed at her. The Prometheus Dawn was destroyed. She had no ship, no communications equipment, no way to contact the other colony ships. The escape pods had scattered across the system like seeds on the wind. How could she possibly keep this promise to the beings who had saved her life? Elena's breakthrough came in the city's archives. Amber Stonesinger led her deep into the Letharian city's lowest levels, where the temperature dropped and the air grew heavy with age. The archives were carved into the planet's bedrock, a vast library where the Letharians stored their history not in books or data crystals, but in resonant stones. Each stone was carved with precise geometric patterns. When a Letharian touched it and hummed at the correct frequency, the stone would vibrate, producing harmonics that told stories, preserved knowledge, and transmitted memories across generations. This is beautiful, Elena whispered, running her hand over a stone that sang of ancient oceans. But Amber Stonesinger led her past the historical records to a chamber Elena hadn't seen before. Here, the stones were different, darker, denser, and covered with what looked like mathematical formulae rendered in three-dimensional carved notation. Science. Technology. Through painstaking translation over several days, Elena began to understand. The Letharians had once been an advanced spacefaring species. Before the catastrophe, they had explored their star system, established colonies on 3 other worlds, and even sent probe ships to nearby stars. Their technology was based on harmonic resonance, using precisely tuned vibrations to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. They had built ships powered by resonance drives that could fold space, allowing faster-than-light travel. But when the catastrophe struck, they had abandoned space exploration. All resources went to survival. The shipyards fell silent. The colonies died. The great resonance drives were dismantled, their components cannibalized for water recycling systems and atmospheric processors. Do you have any ships left? Elena asked, her heart pounding. Amber Stonesinger led her deeper still, to a cavern so vast that Elena couldn't see the ceiling in the dim bioluminescent light. And there, resting in ancient docking cradles, were 3 ships. They were magnificent, organic sculptures of compressed stone and metal, their surfaces covered in the same flowing designs as the city above. But they were also clearly derelict. Dust covered them. Some sections had collapsed. They hadn't flown in centuries. Elena's heart sank. But then she looked closer at the nearest ship. The design was elegant, the engineering principles clear despite the alien technology. The resonance drive's core was still intact, protected by its crystalline housing. I can fix this, she breathed. Amber Stonesinger's harmonics carried skepticism. My people are engineers, Elena explained, gesturing excitedly. We build ships. We understand fusion drives, quantum processors, navigation systems. Your resonance technology is different, but the principles. She touched the ship's hull, feeling the faint vibration still emanating from deep within. The principles are universal. Over the next weeks, Elena threw herself into studying the Litharian technology. She filled pages torn from the escape pod's emergency manual with diagrams and calculations. The Litharians brought her their archived technical knowledge, stones that sang of engine specifications, power distribution networks, and the mathematics of folded space. Elena's engineering training served her well. She had helped maintain the Prometheus Dawn's fusion core, had studied wormhole theory at the Academy, had repaired systems with improvised tools during the colony ship's long journey. This was harder, the technology was alien, the knowledge incomplete, but it wasn't impossible. The Litharians watched her work with growing hope. They assigned their best remaining technicians to assist her. Together, they began the slow process of resurrection, testing power conduits, replacing corroded components, recalibrating the resonance chambers. 3 months into the work, Elena activated the ship's secondary power system. The vessel hummed to life, its crystalline core glowing with soft amber light. The Litharians gathered around, their bodies resonating in harmony with the ship, a song of joy and possibility that brought tears to Elena's eyes. 1 more month, she told them. Maybe 2. And then I can fly to the outer system, find wreckage from my ship, salvage a communications array. I'll contact my people. Amberstone Singer approached her that evening with an object Elena had never seen before. It was a sphere of clear crystal, perfectly smooth, with something dark suspended at its center. Gift, the Litharian hummed. For your people. When they come. Elena held the sphere up to the light. The dark mass at its center seemed to shift and flow. What is it? Through careful harmonic explanation, Elena understood. It was a seed, not biological, but technological. It contained the complete knowledge of Litharian water compression technology, encoded in crystalline matrices that could be read by any civilization with advanced spectroscopy. The gift was incalculable. With this technology, humanity could store and transport water with perfect efficiency. Desert worlds could bloom. Long-range colony ships could reduce their water cargo mass by 99%. Water scarcity could become a distant memory. Why? Elena asked, overwhelmed. You're giving us this. Amberstone Singer's response was simple, profound, you thirsted. We gave water. Now we thirst. You will give water. This is how life continues. Elena clutched the sphere to her chest, making a silent vow. She would get this technology to humanity. She would bring help to Thessera. Whatever it took, she would honor the kindness these dying people had shown a stranded human. The ship's name translated as Stone Wings That Remember Sky. Elena stood in its control chamber, a circular room where crystalline pillars rose from the floor like frozen geysers. The Litharian interface required her to place her hands on specific resonance points and hum at precise frequencies. It had taken her 2 months to learn even the basic control sequences. Are you certain? Amberstone Singer asked, the harmonics carrying worry. The ship is old. We cannot guarantee. I'm certain, Elena interrupted. She had to try. 5 months had passed since the crash. The other escape pods would have reached habitable worlds by now, would have begun establishing survival camps, would be wondering what happened to the Prometheus Dawn and her crew. She had to find them. She had to tell humanity about Thessera. The Litharians had gathered in the ancient shipyard to see her off. Hundreds of them filled the vast cavern, their bodies creating a symphony of farewell harmonics that resonated through stone and bone. Elena felt the weight of their hope pressing down on her. She carried 3 precious things, the crystal sphere containing the water compression technology, a resonant stone that held the complete story of the Litharians, and a small vial of water, droplets freely given by Amberstone Singer and 9 others, a symbolic message to humanity. I will return, Elena promised. With help. With enough water to restore your world. The launch sequence required her to harmonize with the ship itself. Elena placed her hands on the primary resonance points and began to hum the activation sequence. The ship responded, its crystalline core brightening, its ancient systems waking after centuries of sleep. The vessel rose on pillars of harmonic energy, lifting smoothly through the cavern's launch shaft toward the orange sky above. Elena's hands moved across the control pillars, adjusting frequency and amplitude, guiding stone wings through the thin atmosphere and into the black. Space embraced her. The twin suns of Thessera dwindled behind her as she engaged the resonance drive. Space itself seemed to ripple, folding in accordance with ancient mathematics, and the ship leaped forward at impossible speeds. Elena had calculated her route carefully. The outer system contained a massive gas giant with 14 moons. The Prometheus Dawn had passed through that region before the attack. If she was lucky, the wreckage would still be there, slowly orbiting the giant planet, and within that wreckage she might find a salvageable communications array. The journey took 18 hours. Elena spent it in a state of controlled anxiety, constantly monitoring the ship's systems, adjusting harmonics to keep the ancient resonance drive stable. She ate mineral paste from the supplies the Letharians had provided and allowed herself only small sips of water from her recycler. The gas giant appeared like a vast striped marble against the void. Elena brought stone wings out of resonance drive and began scanning for debris. The ship's sensors operated on harmonic principles she didn't fully understand, sending out waves of calibrated vibrations and reading the echoes that returned. There. A debris field spread across 3,000 kilometers, caught in a slowly decaying orbit. Fragments of hull plating, twisted structural members, and, Elena's breath caught, an intact section of the communications deck. She maneuvered stone wings closer, using the ship's manipulation field to grab hold of the debris. The communications array was damaged but not destroyed. The quantum entanglement communicator was still in its shielded housing, potentially functional. Elena suited up in the emergency EVA gear from her original escape pod and went outside. Working in the vacuum, she carefully extracted the communicator, disconnected its power coupling, and brought it back to Stonewings. Installing it in the Letharian ship was a nightmare of improvisation, human technology meeting alien engineering, but Elena had always been good at making impossible repairs. 3 days later, after countless setbacks and near failures, she activated the communicator. The quantum channel opened. Somewhere out in this vast star system, other survivors from the Prometheus Dawn would have matching communicators. If any of them were listening. "This is Captain Elena Reeves of the colony ship Prometheus Dawn," she broadcast. "If anyone can hear this, please respond. This is an emergency transmission. Repeat, this is Captain Elena Reeves. Does anyone copy?" Silence. Elena adjusted frequencies, boosted power, and tried again. "This is Reeves. Is anyone out there?" More silence. She broadcast for 12 hours straight, her voice growing hoarse, her hope beginning to fade. Then, finally, "Captain. Captain Reeves. This is Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Holy hell, we thought you were dead. What's your position?" Elena nearly wept. "Webb. I'm in the outer system, near the gas giant. What's your status? How many survivors?" "We've got 147 confirmed," Webb reported. 3 escape pods made it to the 4th planet. "It's barely habitable, but we're surviving." "Captain, where have you been?" Elena took a breath. "Webb, I need you to listen carefully. I'm about to tell you something that's going to sound insane, but every word is true. And when I'm done, you're going to help me convince every human authority that will listen that we need to organize the biggest rescue mission in history." She began to tell the story of Thessera, of the Letharians, and of the gift they had given to a dying human stranger. The emergency council meeting took place 3 weeks after Elena's return. She had piloted Stone Wings to the 4th planet, a rocky world with a thin atmosphere and vicious dust storms that the survivors had named Hope's End. The reunion with her crew had been emotional and chaotic. They had questions about the alien ship, about her survival, about everything. But none of that mattered as much as the debate now raging in the converted cargo container that served as the colony's assembly hall. "It's too risky," argued Commander Patricia Okonkwo, the highest-ranking officer after Elena. "We barely have enough resources to sustain ourselves. You're asking us to commit to a massive project for aliens we've never met, on a world we've never seen." Elena kept her voice level. "Those aliens saved my life when they could have let me die. They gave me water when they barely have any themselves. They've given us technology that could revolutionize human civilization." "Alleged technology," interrupted Dr. James Morrison, the chief scientist. "We only have your word about this water compression crystal." "Then test it." Elena slammed her hand on the makeshift podium. "I've brought you the sphere. Your spectroscopy equipment survived the crash. Analyze it. You'll see I'm telling the truth." Morrison had the grace to look embarrassed. "We are testing it, Captain. But even if it proves legitimate, that doesn't change the fundamental problem. We're stranded in an alien star system with no way to contact Earth or the other colony fleets. We have 147 people trying to survive on a marginally habitable rock. How can we possibly help an alien civilization?" Elena had anticipated this. She activated the holographic projector, one of the few pieces of advanced technology they'd managed to salvage. A map of the Kepler 442 system appeared, with annotations she'd spent days preparing. "The second planet," she said, pointing. "Preliminary scans from the Prometheus Dawn showed it's covered 70% by water. We confirmed it's outside the habitable zone, too cold for human settlement without extensive terraforming. But we don't need it for ourselves." She expanded the view to show Thessera and the second planet on the same scale. "We can harvest water from the second planet and transport it to Thessera. With the Letharians' resonance drive technology, which they're willing to share, we can build transport ships. We'll need to establish mining operations for raw materials, construct processing facilities." "This is insane," Okonkwo interrupted. "You're describing an industrial civilization. We're sleeping in cargo containers and eating lichen paste." "For now," Elena shot back. "But we have engineers, scientists, technicians. We have the knowledge to rebuild. And the Letharians have technology we can barely imagine: harmonic matter manipulation, crystalline data storage, space-folding drives. This is a partnership, Patricia. We help them survive, they help us thrive." Lieutenant Webb stood up from the crowd. "Captain's right. I've been reviewing the technical data she brought back. This resonance technology could revolutionize everything from propulsion to materials science. Hell, they figured out practical faster-than-light travel. That alone is worth the lives of our people." Okonkwo demanded. "Because that's what you're gambling with. If we commit our resources to this project and it fails, we all die." The assembly hall fell silent. Elena looked out at the faces of her crew, exhausted, uncertain, afraid. They had survived a disaster only to find themselves stranded light years from home. She was asking them to risk everything on a promise to alien beings they'd never met. But she was also asking them to be better than their fear. "When I was dying in the desert," Elena said quietly, "the Letharians could have walked past. They had every reason to. They're dying themselves. Every drop of water they gave me was water they needed to survive. But they stopped. They helped. They saw a living being in need, and they chose compassion over survival." She held up the vial of water Amber Stonesinger had given her. It caught the light, gleaming like liquid diamond. "This is 10 drops of water, freely given by beings who might not see rain again in their lifetimes. They gave it to me not because they expected payment, but because it was right. Because they believed that life should help life. They showed me what we can be at our best." Elena's voice grew stronger. "Humanity left Earth because we'd exhausted our world's resources through greed and short-sightedness. We got a second chance. Now we can choose: do we repeat the same patterns, thinking only of ourselves? Or do we prove we've learned something? That we can be the kind of species that helps instead of exploits? Dr. Morrison stood up. I've just received the preliminary analysis of the crystal sphere. He paused, his expression showing genuine awe. It's real. The encoding is beyond anything we've developed. The technology it describes, if we can replicate it, water scarcity becomes irrelevant. Desert worlds become gardens. The implications are staggering. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Elena seized the moment. Vote, she said. Do we commit to helping Thessera? Do we prove that humanity can be worthy of the kindness we were shown? The vote was close, 81 in favor, 66 against. But it was enough. Elena closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Then she opened them and got to work. They had a dying world to save, and every day counted. 2 years later, Elena stood on a ridge above the Letharian city and watched the clouds gather. They were small clouds, wispy and tentative, but they were real. The first clouds in Thessera's sky in 2,000 years. Below, thousands of Letharians had emerged from the city, their stone-like bodies resonating in harmony, a song of hope and disbelief and overwhelming joy. The transformation had been brutal. The survivors from the Prometheus dawn had worked themselves to exhaustion, building the infrastructure needed for the water transport project. They'd established mining operations in the asteroid belt, constructed processing facilities on Thessera's poles, and reverse-engineered the Letharian resonance drives to build a fleet of transport ships. The Letharians had contributed everything they had, their technology, their knowledge, their labor. The partnership had been awkward at first, two species learning to work together across vast differences in biology and culture. But shared purpose had bound them together. The first transport ship, Promise Keeper, they'd named it, had made its maiden flight 6 months ago. It had traveled to the second planet, descended through icy storms to the frozen oceans, and harvested 5,000 tons of water using Letharian compression technology. The journey to Thessera had taken 3 days. The water had been released into carefully prepared containment fields at Thessera's poles, where thermal processors could manage its distribution. That first delivery had been just the beginning. Now, 14 transport ships made regular runs, bringing more water with each journey. And today, finally, there was enough water vapor in the atmosphere for clouds to form. Amber Stonesinger stood beside Elena, the young Letharian now grown into one of the project's lead coordinators. I never thought. Its harmonics trailed off, overwhelmed by emotion. I know, Elena said softly. The clouds grew darker. The harmonics from the gathered Letharians rose in pitch, becoming almost frantic with anticipation. Elena felt her own heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment that would determine if 2 years of backbreaking work had been worth it. A single droplet fell. It landed on the red sand and sat there, perfect and impossible. Then another fell. And another. The droplets became a drizzle, then a steady rain, the first rain to fall on Thessera in 2 millennia. The Letharian's song became almost unbearable in its intensity, a harmonic frequency that made Elena's bones vibrate and tears streamed down her face. They rushed out into the rain, their stone-like bodies tilting back to catch the droplets, absorbing water through their skin for the first time in generations. Amber Stonesinger was crying. Elena hadn't known Letharians could cry, but clear fluid was streaming down its smooth face. The being grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her out into the rain. They danced together in the downpour, human and alien, celebrating the impossible. Around them, both species mingled, humans laughing and weeping, Letharians resonating pure joy. Children of both species played together, splashing in the forming puddles. Lieutenant Webb appeared at Elena's side, grinning like a fool, his hair plastered to his head. We did it, Captain. We actually did it. We did, Elena agreed. She looked around at the celebration, at 2 species joined in triumph, and felt a profound sense of rightness. This is just the beginning, Marcus. The Letharians are sharing their resonance drive technology with us. We're building new ships together, human engineering and Letharian harmonic principles. Dr. Morrison thinks we could reach Earth in 5 years, maybe less. Going home? Webb asked. Elena shook her head. Bringing Earth here. This is home now. Humanity and the Letharians, building something new together. The rain continued to fall, soaking into the thirsty sand, beginning the long process of healing a wounded world. Elena tilted her face up to the sky, feeling the water on her skin, and thought about the impossible chain of events that had led to this moment. A ship had crashed. A human had been dying of thirst. 3 Letharians had chosen compassion over caution. And from that simple act of kindness, an entire world had been reborn. She thought about Earth, about humanity's long history of taking more than they gave, of seeing resources instead of relationships. But maybe that could change. Maybe this moment, 2 species choosing to help each other, choosing to build instead of exploit, could be the beginning of something better. Amber Stonesinger's harmonics cut through Elena's thoughts. Your people gave water to us. Forever, we are changed. Elena smiled and responded in the Letharian language she'd spent 2 years learning. You gave water to 1 human. Forever, we are all changed. In the distance, thunder rolled across the desert, not the thunder of destruction, but the thunder of rain, of life returning, of hope made real. The first thunderstorm on Thessera in 2,000 years was just beginning. And somewhere in that storm, human and Letharian engineers were already planning the next phase, bringing enough water to create rivers, then lakes, and eventually, though it would take decades, perhaps even an ocean. The drought was ending. For Thessera, for humanity, for the future both species would build together, the drought was finally ending. Elena raised the vial Amber Stonesinger had given her 2 years ago, now empty, its symbolic water returned to the world that had given it. She let the rain fill it instead, capturing this moment, this promise kept. To kindness, she whispered. May it echo across the galaxy. The rain fell harder, and the Letharians sang, and humanity joined them in celebrating the simple, profound truth, that compassion given freely can change the universe. The end.